everyone to Coffee with a Codex. My name is Dot Porter, and I am a curator in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books, and Manuscripts at the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. I split my time with the Kislak Center and the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies, or SIMS. SIMS is a research and development institute that is located in the Kislak Center, and we do manuscript studies, all kinds of stuff. We have physical collections, we have digital collections, we digitize our own manuscripts, we also host manuscripts from other institutions. And I work with both the physical and the digital. Coffee with a Codex is my weekly program. Once a week for about 30 minutes, I take usually one book off the shelf. This week, we happen to have 3, and I'll tell you more about why in a second. And it's really informal. It's show and tell. I am usually not an expert on content. I work with manuscripts, so I know manuscripts really well. I don't always know what's in them really well. And these ones that we're going to be looking at today are a really great example of that. It's 3 copies of the same text. And here again are the links there and there. The first 3 links there are to the catalog records if you want to have a look. So what is the text? The text is a collection of prayers for the Prophet Muhammad and other devotional material. And the text itself, the original text that these are all copies of, were written by Muhammad ibn Sulaiman Yazuli in the 15th century. So he died in 1465. So the original text was written before 1465. It was and is, I think, still incredibly popular in the Islamic world. And so we happen to have 3, I think we might even have more than 3 copies, but these were the copies that I chose for today. They were written over a period of about 100 years. So I just want to show each of them to you. We'll talk a little bit more about what the content is and what the books are used for. And they're really beautiful and really interesting. So let's go. So the first one that we're going to be looking at is MS Codex 1905 here. And again, if you need the link, there is the link. MS Codex 1905. This was a copy that was made in AH 1078, which is 1667 in the Western calendar. And let's have a look. It's nicely bound. I'm going entirely from the catalog record, and we don't always have really great records for our Arabic manuscripts. This one, we do have a date for it, which is great. We don't have a date for the binding. I don't know if this is, I reckon it's not original, but it's very nice. It is what's called a type 2 binding because it has a flap. This is a really common thing that you see here. It basically functions to make a little box. You basically have a box that you can carry your book around, the binding itself. It's got gilded edges and decorations that are embossed quite deeply into this leather binding. It's a very nice binding. So we open it up. All 3 of these books are written on paper, which is very typical for, I don't know if we have any of our Arabic manuscripts are on parchment. Usually they're on paper from quite early, unlike Western manuscripts. So here we go with the opening. From what I can see for this text, and if there's anyone here who knows more than me about the text, please feel free to drop your knowledge in the chat as I go. So it opens with the names of God and the names of Muhammad. So this one happens to be very beautifully illuminated. So we have gold, not only in this header, but gold decoration around the text itself. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see that there's like little flowers here and other things. The script is Naskh script, which is a very common script written for written Arabic that you see a lot here. And the reason that there's these are obviously have been added by conservation because we don't want the gold sticking together. So this is, we're going to see this pretty much through the whole, just the first couple of pages. And then we, once we've gotten past the sort of impressive opening, we still have some gold, but not quite as much as we had before. So we still have these really shiny, beautiful frames, which is something that we're going to see in all three of these manuscripts, have these frames around it. Joyce asked, why did they use paper? Was it considered better or more stable? I don't think it was because it was better or more stable. It was because they had paper early, and they so I will say it was, in my experience, especially early paper, like 12th and 13th century paper from the Middle East is really high quality. So this is pretty good paper. Again, this is 1667 in the Western calendar, so 17th century paper. This is pretty good. And earlier, it's even better paper because it's sort of rag paper. I think it's just what they had, and it was inexpensive and available. And so that was what they wrote on. I will point out that there are marginal notes here, a few in this book. So it's a devotional book, and it is designed, the person who wrote it designed it to be read over a period of 2 months. So it's actually divided into 60 sections, and it's designed to be read daily over time, which I think varies in practice, but that was his reasoning. So here we move from some narrative prayer text to a chart, which I think this is where we get to the names of God. We have the 200, did I say 200 names of God, I believe. And so I think that this is what's happening in this chart. The other manuscripts show this a little bit differently, but we do have that. So we get to the end, and again, there's more marginal notes here. I'm pointing out the notes in the margins because it shows a kind of use of the book. It wasn't a book that was 99 names of God. Thank you. I had it open in my browser and I couldn't find it. So the 99 names of God. But it shows a particular kind of use. So people weren't just reading this book, they were reacting to it and making notes about it. And then this is really why I wanted to show this, because I think this is so interesting. All three of these books have these illustrations here. And these are, let me make sure I get this right. The mosque at Mecca is here, and the Rawda at Medina is here. So we have Mecca and Medina, the two most important places for practitioners of Islam, and they're illustrated here. And I want you to notice that this particular example is, I wouldn't say it's photorealistic, but you can tell immediately that this is a place. We have these mountains in the background on both of them. Here we have sort of grassy hills. There's more, decorations. There's these sort of buildings that imply a town or a city, and then we have the places themselves with the walls around them. So this is the big illustration. here. And then after this, we have more of the sort of narrative prayers. Another one of these gorgeous, really, this is so beautiful, like illuminated header, and more notes in the margin. I also want to point out, particularly if you, like me, are sort of more used to looking, I forgot to put this back in. Let me put this back in. In Western manuscripts, the notes in the margin are going to tend to be either written horizontally or sometimes vertically. So you might have notes written in this direction or written in this direction. In Arabic manuscripts, they're usually written on a slant like this and here. And sometimes you'll see manuscripts. This one hasn't been ruled for marginal notes. Sometimes you do find them, and the lines are made on the diagonal. So you'll notice as we go through that these are on the diagonal. We're starting a new section, so we have a great header and more of this illumination, and then we get back to this. And I think that is the last sort of fancy page. I'll turn a little bit more so we can see a little more. And again, this was designed to be read over a period of a couple of months, 60, I think it said 60 sections to be read over 2 months, which makes sense. So you have 30 sections per month. Let's see, Bran says, if folks are interested in early paper, this is a nice post by Jonathan M. Bloom, who's also written a book about paper in the Islamic world. Oh, that's great. And I'll include that in the notes on YouTube as well. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see a link to that there. So this is our first, here's another one with some illuminated, some more notes. I also want to point out just one last thing before I move to the next one. This paper, I don't know if you've noticed, it's very shiny. And it was a practice in the Islamic world to actually buff your paper. So you'd like rub it with a stone to make it shiny. This was a thing that you wanted your paper to be shiny. And there are actually illustrations that I've seen of scribes at work. So I took a class this summer, a rare book school class with Shreve Simpson and Kelly Tuttle, who are much more knowledgeable than I am about Islamic manuscripts. And we looked at illustrations of scribes doing their work, and it includes sort of this buffering there. So there's another illuminated section. And then at the end, we'll see the ending. Again, a sort of typical way to end is you have a colophon that ends in a point. I don't actually know if this is a colophon would be where the scribe is sort of saying, here's who I am, and here's the date maybe, and I'm finishing up the manuscript now. But whether this is a colophon, the ending, it almost always ends in a point like this. And then we have some more beautiful illumination there. So that's very nice. So this is our first. This is MS Codex 1905. And this was a gift of Gordon A. Block in 1966. So we've had this since 1966. Okay, so that's 1905. The next one that we're going to be looking at is, oh no, sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. That was 1905. It was a gift of Gordon Block. Okay. But the next one that we're going to look at here, this is MS Codex 1894. And it was written in AH 1204 or 1789. So we're about 100 years after the other one. This one isn't quite as nice. It also has this, what we call the type 2 binding with the flap. It also has a similar kind of design, although the quality isn't quite as high. And again, I don't know when. It's not an original binding, but I don't know when the binding was made. So you can see here too that there's been some work done. Like this is more recent paper as a paste down. Let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. All right. So some things will look similar though. So we're going to open it up to the first page and we have our illuminated header, not quite as nice as the other one. I'm not sure this is actually gold. It looks not as sort of shiny as the other one, or maybe not as high quality gold, but you can see that here again, they've put the gold between the lines on the first page to sort of make it a little more fancy, even though the quality isn't as high. And we have the gold frames moving forward here. Again, it's on paper. I think this one doesn't have quite as many marginal notes as the one that we just looked at. Here we go. Let's see. But what we will see is some sections that we have seen. Eventually, we're going to get to the Mecca and Medina illustrations. Let's see. Oh, and here's the chart. I actually like this chart a little bit better. Better. It is appealing on an aesthetic level because while the other one was like a grid, this is a little bit more uneven. So it's like it's been purpose made to fit the words. Ooh, and it's even left space for the letter there, which is sort of neat. So this again, the 99 names of God, officially, as somebody said in the chat up earlier, officially the names are qualities that God expresses. So that is that. And then we get to, and this is quite different, right? So the first one that we looked at, 17th century, it was sort of realistic. And this one is not so real. We can still sort of tell what it is. So here's Mecca and Medina. We can see there's the walls around them here. There's a garden, it looks like here, and then buildings on the inside, but it's not realistically drawn. It's more figurative than the other one, which is sort of interesting, and it's still quite colorful with a little bit of gold. We're lacking the mountains in the distance, which is a little too bad. Let's see. The black cube-like structure is the Kaaba. Here. So there's the Kaaba. And Bran is asking me to move the pages so you can see where the gold is. So I'm doing that a little bit. There's not a whole lot. It's mostly around the bottom edge. There's a little bit here and the frame, and then a little bit there. So I hope you can see that. There we go. All right. So that is that. And then again, we move on to the sort of prayer sections here. So, and I'm not sure, since this one is not quite as fancy, I guess you could say, as the other one, not as richly decorated. Still has some margins there, marginal notes. Don't think there are headers. There we go. But what we can do is, paper's quite, again, it's quite shiny there. Nice paper. And when we get to the end, let's see how it ends here. oop, there's a little more gold. Finishing up, and then, oh, no, we don't have that pointy ending, but there we go. But I think this is sort of serving the same kind of function. Okay, so there's this one. And again, this is MS Codex 1894. This was this also? No, so this was sold at auction at Rosebery's, London, as part of the Islamic and Indian art sale in 2018. So we actually purchased this one in 2018, and likely it was purchased to go along with the other two that I'm showing you, which were both gifts of, what did I say, 1966, I think. Okay, so one more, and this will take us all the way to the end. So this is MS Codex 1910, and it is AH 1259 or 1878. So let's get our dates, make sure I have my dates right. So the first one was 1667. The second one was 1789. And then this one is 1878. So they're, each one is about 100 years, not quite 100 years apart. So this is 100 years after the one we just looked at, and 200 years after the first one. This one does not have a flap. It just has the binding, and it's got tape, tape on the thing. So like not a great binding. It still has a little decoration though, but it's quite worn. And this one is not as nice at all as the other one. I have to be quite careful actually, because the paper, this is not very high quality paper, and the ink that was used for the frame has eaten into the paper, and so it's very delicate and falling apart a little bit. But I still wanted to show you this because this is a little different in an important way. It opens not with an illuminated heading that we've already seen. It actually opens with the text of a poem that doesn't appear in the other ones. This is a poem called the Burda, which is a very well-known poem. It is in honor of the Prophet Muhammad, so it goes along with the rest of the book, so it makes sense that it would be here. And so it's been copied both at the beginning and the end, and it's in a different script. So the script of the text itself, like the other two that we looked at, is a script called Nask, which is it's a very common writing script that you see. This is Nastaliq, which you often see used for Persian, and it's what's called a hanging script, and because it sort of looks like it's hanging when it's written, and it's pretty. I mean, frankly, it's prettier than the Nask script, and so it's a more decorative kind of script. And so this poem has been written around the rest of it. So if we skip forward a little bit just to look at the script, here's the Nastaliq, and then here's the Nask, which is more straight up and down. So I think even if you don't know Arabic, you can see that the writing is different there. Okay, now let's take a look at the decoration. Again, it is not quite as, or maybe it's a little different here. So we have the headers. Now we have more colorful frames around it. We don't have the gold between the lines that we saw in the other two books, but we have color and these sort of round decorations up here. Still very pretty. And nobody's asked, but I don't have any information on where exactly these were written. I don't know where they were written, but I imagine that they were written in different places too, different places, different times. Here is where oh, you can't see that. The ink is eating away here. That's not great. Oh, you still can't see it there. That's an example there, because it is, it's probably iron, you know, that's sort of eating through it. So again, we have our text. The text itself is pretty. It's nicely written. It just happened to be on paper that isn't great. This is a little, I just noticed this. So here we have text, the prayer text written here. And then, oh, I'm so worried about this. Here we go. Here is this manuscript's version of Mecca and Medina. So again, we have a more sort of figurative view. We have the walls around and the buildings. And here as well, we have the garden with the trees, which again is nice. And we also, it looks like these have been labeled too. So there's words written in here that I think is labeling sections. Not sure entirely what that is. So that's nicely done. And then here we have the text. And then I think the last thing, because we're about to run out of time, I think, and Home, your name is not Home, but you can tell me if I'm wrong. I think that here is where we're getting the 99 names of God. And instead of putting them in a chart, they're sort of indicated in this way here, which is sort of interesting that it's the same text and the same information, but it's presented in these slightly different ways over time, probably in different geographical areas. But I love it because it really shows the importance of the text over time, and how frequently it was copied. If we have 3 copies here, and it's really beautiful. Even this one that doesn't have that isn't written on very nice paper. Let's see. Joyce is asking about the marks at the bottom of the page. I think that these are. I think you're asking about these. These are catchwords. Yeah. Yes, Yelin says it too. They're catchwords. And while in Western manuscripts, catchwords, you usually only see them at the end of quires. In Islamic manuscripts, you often see them at the bottom of every page. It's just the way that they did it. And it is 12:30. So we're done. Thank you so much for coming. I love having a reason to pull out books that I haven't really looked at before and talk about them. And I appreciate you being here. I'll be back next week and the week after. You all have the link and the password so you can join me. And I hope you all have a great week, and I'll see you later.